Critical Role Recap Season 2, Episode 74. Last week, the Mighty Nein made their way to Uthadern, where they spoke with the son of the legendary blacksmith who made the Star Razor, the sword that they've had pieces of that they've been trying to put back together. He told them that he could indeed help them reforge this sword, but he would need some materials first. He told the Mighty Nein that he would need ice flex in order to do the job, which is mithril that has been breathed on by a white dragon. They asked him if he knew of any white dragons or knew where they could get any ice flex, and he gave them a couple leads of where they could find out more about it. And then as they left the shop, they saw a hooded, cloaked figure walking towards them, and that's where the episode ended last week and picked up this week. We immediately start off this week's episode by introducing our guest character, who will be with us next week as well. This week's guest, Mika Burton, is immediately brought on, and she is playing the cloaked figure, who introduces herself as Rini. She is an Aasimar druid. She says that she's kind of on these permanent quests from an angel known as Samliel, who gives her guidance and tells her what to do, essentially. And most recently, he has been sending her visions or telling her to go visit a white dragon. And so when she overhears the Mighty Nein talking about this, she kind of just jumps her way into the group. They learn that Rini has lived here for about 5 years, and so they use her local knowledge to help them go find the two places that were mentioned by the blacksmith, the Plexus Post, as well as the archives. They make their way to the Plexus Post because the Plexus Post is on the way to the archives, so they decide to go ahead and stick together as a single group and go visit both places together. Inside, they meet the proprietor named Ava, who is not a huge fan of Rini, and Rini is not a huge fan of her, mostly because just their personalities clash a little bit. But they are able to buy quite a bit of mithril odds and ends that they decide they could melt down and possibly use that as the raw mithril for the ice flex that they intend to have made for them by going to visit a white dragon that they will learn about later at the archives. The Mighty Nein briefly talk about stealing some things from Ava, to which Rini says she'd have to kill them if they did because she kills everything that is evil. It seemed the Mighty Nein kind of question her on what exactly is evil enough to be killed, whether jaywalking would warrant an immediate smiting from her, and she said she'd have to ask Samliel about the specific details as she wasn't really sure. They also ask Ava if she has any refined residuum, and it turns out that she does actually have a big bar of refined residuum. The Mighty Nein offer to do tasks for her in exchange for this residuum, and also in exchange for this green glass substance that Caleb is familiar with. She asks them if they're more inclined to hunt monsters or do stealthy tasks, and Ford says basically that they're capable of doing both. And so she mentions that there is a family in the town nearby that stole a ring from her, or a ring that was supposed to be hers, she says. She would like the Mighty Nein to go and steal it back without them knowing, basically. They end up spending 850 gold to buy the bits of mithril trinkets that they had found, as well as an echo stone that she had offered them. The echo stone basically repeats a message every 5 minutes after you speak into it until you deactivate it. They figured that that might be useful in some way, so they go ahead and grab one of those up along with the mithril. After this transaction, they head on their way to the archives. Inside the archives, they end up having to request specific books as opposed to being able to peruse the shelves freely, and they're charged 10 gold for each book that they ask for. So they ask for a various number of books and spend a few hours reading them. Caleb, while he's reading one of the arcane magic books, notices that one of the pages seems to have some sort of enchantment on it itself. Not writes a message to Jester and tells her to basically be ready, that Not's going to make a distraction so that they can try and get this page of the book out of there. So Not goes ahead and fires her crossbow bolt at Caleb, who reels, and then Not puts on some melodramatic thing about being cheated on or something, as Jester sneakily tears out the page, stuffs it in her pocket, and then they basically get kicked out of the archives and banned from it for an indeterminate amount of time. When Bo goes to pay for the books, she adds a little bit extra to try and reduce this amount of time that they would be banned from the archives, and they go ahead and scurry on their way afterwards, being told that, yeah, that might help a little bit, but he's still banned. They then head back to Umagorn, the blacksmith, and have him melt down all of the mithril trinkets into a single piece of mithril bar that he can then work, and they end up having just enough mithril with a little bit extra for their intended purposes. They then make their way around town and speak with a couple of individuals to ask about a possible teleportation circle that they could use for getting back here, or maybe if anyone knows of any quick way to teleport to near the dragon that Bo had learned about while she was reading one of the books at the archives. Bo learns that there is an ancient white dragon named Gillidan the Nightmare in Ivory, who is some 250 to 400 miles north of their current position. So they decide that that will be the dragon that they seek out to try and breathe on this piece of mithril that they have just now received. They find out that there is indeed a teleportation circle, however it is inside the archives, which they have just recently been kicked from and banned. So Bo, on behalf of Caleb and the others, returns to the archives and talks her way into gaining permanent access to this teleportation circle. It ends up costing her 2,000 gold, as well as a 6-month assignment from Rini, in which she will serve to venture out into the Savalier Woods once again for them for some purpose, which she had previously been sent on an excursion to the Savalier Wood that went awry. So they end up parting with 2,000 gold, but in turn now have access to another teleportation location. Caleb goes with the archivist and studies the sigil so that he can return there, and then they decide to go back to Rosanna and request the help of Essek in order to have him teleport them near the dragon. So they go back to Rosanna with Rini and have a conversation with Essek, which ultimately results in him successfully teleporting them to Gillidan, the White Dragon's lair. In doing this, Matt mentioned that they managed to avoid quite a few encounters that he had drawn up and different maps that he had available for them as well. So the Mighty Nein now have their mithril in hand and are on their way to the White Dragon's lair to try and get some ice flex made, and that's where the episode ends, with Essek parting and saying good luck as they are out once again in the tundra wasteland in a blowing snowstorm. So next week we'll pick up with them heading on their way to this dragon's lair and attempting to safely have it breathe fire on this piece of mithril they have. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.